Delighted to be joined by Dr. Craig Overmyer for today's podcast. And Dr. Craig has recently written a brand new book, Accelerate Through Conflict. Craig, why did you write the book?
I wrote the book because there are a lot of missing conversations because of our social conditioning and the natural friendships we have at work. Oftentimes we miss having the kind of candor that is a little bit uncomfortable, but has a huge impact on our business and how we really interact with each other and our customers. So I call it the missing conversations that can have a significant impact on your business, especially if you think of your business like a flywheel. Lack of candid conversations or destructive conversations really puts a clinker in that flywheel.
So writing the book, and right now, say we're in these challenging times, when you wrote it, who was it in mind that you were writing the book for?
Yeah, so I'm working with mid-market executive teams, business owners who have formed a leadership team, and they're scaling up. And as they scale up, they're facing increasing complexity. As they increase complexity, they begin to experience problems that they never knew would be there before. If you go, for example, one of my companies 10 years ago had 100 employees, now they have 525. So over the years, as they faced this complexity, I helped them remember that it's like Peter Drucker said, there are only three things that naturally occur in all organizations: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else requires leadership. So Jeff Kittle, who's in the book, as he was going from 100 employees to now 525, really has been a model for having his senior team have this equanimity, a sense of presence, but be able to handle hard conversations. And I say we need to have these conversations before they become crucial conversations. And so it's the idea then is, as you face complexity, you need to face the complexity, the friction, confusion, underperformance, and do it in such a way that you have candor and psychological safety to actually address issues.
So one thing I was struck when I'd never really come across this term before was the mindful leader. Why do you believe mindful leaders are so important at this time?
Yes, so the mindset is the one thing we can control. We cannot control all the uncertainty around us as we've recently experienced, but I can control my mind. In the book, I have a reference that there's two quotes put together. Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, talks about there's a space between stimulus and response, and that we should live there. Ari Weinswig, who's an incredible entrepreneur, business owner in Ann Arbor with Zingerman's, a founder of Zingerman's, says that that's mindfulness. It's the ability to live and breathe in that space that we can then not be caught off guard by the uncertainty and get aroused by stress, but really be able to reduce the limbic system threat consciously so that we're really good under fire. When the uncertainty is coming, the volatility, the uncertainty, the ambiguity, mindfulness is really based basically in being conscious and aware of this moment. So that's why the book always says, seize the moment rather than being seized by the moment.
Yeah, and I think it's something that is really coming to the fore now is mindfulness. And I think you talk about emotional intelligence in the book as well. But you also talk about having an in-the-moment conversation. Tell me more about what that means.
Yeah, I learned that concept from a manager that I was working with. She's called a regional manager in a company that has multiple apartment buildings in different cities. And her job was, as a regional manager, is to help all the managers who have these properties. And so oftentimes, a manager, and let's say a maintenance supervisor, they may have some issues like, did he follow up on a ticket to fix a toilet? And are the apartments ready? So sometimes it becomes uncomfortable to hold one another accountable. So I heard her say, this manager just doesn't know how to have an in-the-moment conversation. So I went back and did the research. Crucial conversations are when it's already kind of blown up and you really need to have a directive approach and people need to be really tough with each other. So I really then put a pencil to it and thought about it, did research, and I developed a 4-step model that allows a person to then be at work in a moment. It's a little uncomfortable, but they need to address issues that impact, for example, in that situation, getting something repaired, having an apartment available, because eventually that affects your financial, your bottom line. And it also affects the culture because eventually when people avoid in the moment conversations, it's a false sense of harmony. And then the regional has to deal with someone talking to them about somebody else. And that's quite dysfunctional.
Yeah. And again, everything through the book is all around sort of conflict, or maybe the avoidance of conflict. Why is it that as humans, we look to avoid conflict?
Yeah, we're socially conditioned, I think, to be a tribe, right? And so then in the tribe, we want there to be harmony. But then, like Drucker said, when friction, confusion, underperformance comes, that requires leadership. And so it's self-leadership to know, can I be safe in this situation to speak up, or can I be safe to confront someone? And that's tough to figure out because the research shows that actually there's a spike in stress when you have to give feedback. It's even worse for the person than for the person who's getting feedback. So I've studied from the Neuro Leadership Institute. I would recommend any of your listeners should look into their brain-based conversations training. So I was able to be certified in their work, brain-based coaching. And that's where I really learned that you have to really understand how to reduce threat. And there's 5 dimensions of threat. Their model is called SCARF. So one level is status. What is my status with you? Is it being elevated or diminished? The C stands for certainty. Can I be certain about how we're going to respond to each other? A is autonomy. Do I have any choice in the matter? R is, if I speak up, will this affect our relationship? And then the F is fairness. Will it seem unfair if I confront you? So I think it's just naturally wired that we're socially conditioned that we don't want to disturb the status with each other, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, or fairness. So sometimes that creates false harmony.
Yeah, but
so
I guess we're not all quite equal. So is it true that some people actually enjoy conflict and others then maybe move away from conflict? Are we different in that way?
Yes, in the book I recommend there's an assessment called productive conflict, and it provides a way for you to see that depending on personality style, there are some personality styles that would lean into avoidance. They want harmony. So their preference during conflict is to make sure there's not a disturbance of harmony.
Yeah.
The other end of the continuum is someone who's very direct and they want to win and they want to make sure it's all out there. But all styles, whatever your behavioral style, can learn to acknowledge, wow, this is a time when I need to listen more, or, I need to speak up. And without some training, that's really hard to do.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And, that particular exercise in terms of, I think it's John Wiley and Sons that you've teamed up with to create a productive conflict profile. What does a productive conflict profile give you?
Yeah, the productive conflict was developed by Wiley Publishers, and it's a US-based firm, but I think any English-speaking country can use it. And it was, so a lot of people have heard of the DISC, D-I-S-C,
okay.
And you could say, oh, I don't want to take another DISC assessment. I understand that. But this is a special assessment that includes rating how you show up during conflict. So let's say you may even naturally have a style that's more dominant, but there's an adaptive style that you still hold back. So you really need some, to me, it's like an MRI instead of an X-ray. A
Right.
typical disc is like an X-ray. This is an MRI, but it's especially focused on this so important issue. We have to master conflict. If we don't, it really impacts our health, our well-being, and our business.
Yeah, and I imagine right now, health is really important. Mindfulness is important. All these things are such important considerations and just such fundamental change. So,
Yes.
how do you coach people through this, Craig? How do you coach people through all the things that you've been talking about in the book?
So the book itself is not a, it's, so I do coach and I train, but I really make it easier. In the book, I call it, it's collegial. It's two colleagues answering the same questions. So for example, I'll have a team meet and they'll do their assessment, productive conflict assessment, and then they'll just be candid about their style and do they like conflict, do they avoid it? And just by talking about it, it changes so much. Then we take them through the 4 steps. And the first step is, hey, what's on your mind that needs to be shared or put aside that we can be focused? And then a second question is, well, what is the real challenge for you? So then when both people answer that question, then it makes it so that you don't have one person as a coach and one person as a coachee. You're colleagues. And colleagues need to have these candid conversations that are healthy. So then through the training, you learn, all right, here's my style, here's your style, and here's a simple 4-step model that will both answer the same questions. And it's remarkable, the impact, because then you have colleague-to-colleague accountability and responsibility and the ability to speak up and be psychologically safe.
Very nice. Oh, I love it. I just want to move off to a slightly different conversation because you also reference an awful lot in the book, lots of different models, one of which I use actually in my coaching from Jim Collins is the Flywheel. And I'm just wondering again, in terms of how on earth does a flywheel really help an organization in terms of generating that momentum that you're looking for to really move forward?
Yeah, it's amazing. Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great, shows that you need to understand the components of the business you have and how those components impact one another. And Mike, I connect up the idea that the flywheel is, it's got a momentum, but it's kind of like if you put your hands up against this big flywheel, it can create friction. There's friction there and underperformance and some kind of conflict, then that kind of impacts that flywheel. So for example, in my business, my flywheel is I have a foundation scaling up, and then I also then want to have tools for cultural transformation. So then I realize that when I'm working with my team and we look at, all right, here's our business flywheel, and then once we see that we're trying to then develop team transformation, this will then have an impact on their business model, and that will improve our business model. So then we go back to scale ups again. So it's kind of a circular way to look at how does our business called Cultures That Work really run. So I have to use my own. It's like the cobbler has to make his own shoes better.
Yeah.
And so my team, then we sit down and we realize, well, wait a minute, there's some friction here. It's not easy for our clients to go online, or we're having trouble with our database. So you see that all those things that if we don't address them, then let's say the database doesn't go out correctly, or we don't follow up and follow through, our business flywheel, it's like putting brakes on it. And so that's why I take this model from Jim Collins, learn to build your business flywheel to see the components of how your business runs, but also then realize that it's these conversations or the lack thereof that can either decrease the momentum or increase the momentum of the business flywheel.
Very good. And then the other book you referenced, which probably a lot of us have read and looked at, is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And I use it a lot in coaching because I think it's such, when you first start an engagement, you can see whether or not they are a fully functional team and they are aligned and healthy. But I think if I remember rightly, Patrick talks about, the number one dysfunction is lack of trust. And if with lack of trust, then you have this fear of conflict. So
Yeah.
in terms of to our listeners, if someone has got that fear of conflict, that's pervading from that lack of trust, how can you then go about changing the behaviors of that team to bring about a greater amount of conflict?
Yeah, I admire Patrick now for many years. You and I have leveraged his amazing training. So just think about the process that I described in the book. When you have to disclose to other people your style, your preferences, that you're avoiding conflict, now I'm being vulnerable.
Yeah.
So the model itself allows people to be vulnerable in a healthy way. Secondly, then, often we know that how we should have conflict, but it makes it equalized. It makes it simpler to understand. We should go through this process of seizing the moment. What's the real problem? We need to remember the future, which is crafting a shared vision. Now we got to build alignment to really get in alignment to achieve that vision. And then we need to champion new execution habits. So then it makes it more consistent that a team can practice mastering conflict. It's interesting, Neil, he also has a new book called The Motive. And of all the 5 dysfunctions, of all the 5, he picked out conflict to double down. And that is my experience, and that's what the research says. As a matter of fact, Daniel Goleman says the competency, emotional intelligence competency of conflict management is hard and tough, and we need more training. So if Patrick doubles down on it, that's why I picked accelerate through the conflict, embrace the conflict, learn from the conflict, have these conversations so that they don't become these crucial conversations that are much harder.
Yeah. And the other thing I was struck on as well, I think one of the areas of leadership is first having that self-awareness and knowing, where our strengths are, where our blind spots are. And you talk about when you're coaching a client, you help them in terms of understanding the importance of self-leadership. Why do you talk about that? Why do you think self-leadership is so important?
Yeah, you're referencing then back to the emotional intelligence, and I'm an avid student of Daniel Goleman and Dr. Boatzis, who wrote the book Primal Leadership. And there's 4 domains of emotional intelligence. First of all, you have to know thyself. So self-leadership is self-awareness. Then I need to manage myself. And then I need to have awareness of you, which is empathy. So it's other awareness. And then I need to have awareness of the whole organization. However, if I don't have awareness of myself, then I'm self-delusional, right? I'm not aware of how I'm showing up. If you don't have awareness of others, you're clueless as to what's going on with them. So, but it all goes back to being true to thyself. To thine own self be true, which is very good for someone in UK, to quote Shakespeare.
Yeah. Now, behind you, you've got a big phrase that says cultures at work. And I sense right now, more than ever before, it's implicit and so important that you're paying real attention to your culture, your organization's culture. What are the areas that you would be helping an organization that maybe their culture is not necessarily broken, but it needs repair or needs real focus? What are the areas that you're beginning to work on to help them on their culture right now?
So this is going to date our podcast, but we're going through the COVID-19 healthcare crisis, now a business crisis. And so we've been trying to manage the levels of threat we're all experiencing. So right now I'm inviting everyone to really understand there's 3 levels of threat that your culture is going through. One level is COVID-19 was in the world and it's not really impacting us. We can keep doing our work. Second level is it's here. And it's impacting our work and disrupting because of shutdown and people are getting sick and maybe even people dying. And then level 3 is our business is stopped or we've lost a loved one. Yeah. So I'm teaching people to be mindful of how do we name the level of threat that you're in and just be truthful and honest and open about that. Then out of that though, this is the time to start thinking of pivoting from crisis management to what is it we're going to be going toward? So I am going to say a bold statement. Do not go back to work, because everybody's looking for this new normal, and it's a trick, because then you're tricking yourself into going back to something that you'll never have. So my saying is, let's go forward to our new work and learn from this. Many people have died. Let's don't let their death be in vain. Let's learn how to transform our business so profoundly, because if you go back to and even the word normal is not good. You want that comfort. We need to learn how to have ongoing conversations that I'm talking about in the book. I'm not the end all be all of this, but I think it's a good place to start. But let's now think of how will we do our new work, have better communication, have more empathy, have love for our customers, pay attention to each other, and then look at our business models and systems that are really ineffective and inefficient on some levels, and create a whole new mindset for the business. All your business may not change, but your mindset can.
Yeah, such powerful words. Such, I think it's that advice right now is so prescient. And final question really is, for those people right now who maybe have never had a coach before, who've never really needed to seek out professional help to really either survive or we hope then to be able to accelerate the business growth. Where do you see the benefits in having someone like yourself as a professional coach being alongside them on their journey?
Yeah, so 20 years ago, I received some coaching from a professional coach. I'm here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and it was so transformational that I began to study what that was. I retired from being a mental health provider, mediator, a lot of intense work with psychiatry. And so then I discovered that the coaching, first of all, transformed me. And I continue to have a coach. So even me as a coach, I have to have a coach, because I see any professional, I hate to overuse sports, but sports, you can never have a sport without a coach. You cannot have a great education without a mentor, a teacher who's a great coach, who's bringing out the best. And so coaching a coach helps evoke from you your own discovery. Consultants tell you, but coaches evoke a discovery. So I have a coach now who is a Navy SEAL. His name is Mark Devine. His new book is Staring Down the Wolf. And so I'm in this intense effort of looking at my new self. How will I come through this crisis a transformed person? How will I help others? So without that, we have blind spots. Blind spots. We won't see it. We'll default back to old patterns. And so coaches reveal blind spots. And without a coach, you'll do okay. But with a coach, a great coach like yourself, other scaling up coaches, you can be exceptional because we have too many blind spots. Our unconscious mind is going to block us. In Mark Devine's book, Staring Down the Wolf, what he's saying is what you have to stare down is your old shadow. And we can't look at our own shadow. And so that requires some outside help. Now, therapy is different. Therapy is healing a wound. But coaching is all about helping you get stronger, better, but through your own insights and discovery.
And never has it been more important, probably over the coming months and years, to get stronger, get better, to push yourself, to make sure you're able to stay outside your comfort zone and be stretched, maybe inspired. What did you say again, that phrase about your shadow that Mark Devine uses?
So Mark Devine says, there's inner old scripted messages that are now unconscious that are big blocks, especially for the senior leaders. Whoever's listening, if you're a leader, your culture can only grow as much as you. And if you have blind spots and you're not aware of your own biases, and you have some negative automatic thoughts, and that comes out in the productive conflict assessment, you're having automatic thoughts about stuff that goes back when you were 5 years old. So you don't have to have a therapist to help dig that out, maybe not, but I think if you like that book and even good coaching, you got to clear out your own clutter. We got too much stuff going on in our heads. So it always, any in the moment conversation has to start with seize the moment, clear your mind, reduce the threat, breathe, be mindfully present, teach your culture. So let's just imagine mindful leadership at every level. What if everyone in your culture was mindful of how they're showing up, they're present, they're empathetic, they hold one another accountable? That's the vision. That's what you can get, but you can't, it's, we just are too conditioned. We stay stuck in our own stuff without a coach.
Indeed. Dr. Craig, thank you so much for joining us today. Such powerful words. And I, for one, have really enjoyed reading your new book, Accelerate Through Conflict. I think right now, it's the time has come for it. You know, we're going to see and need these sort of powerful tools to be able to give some framework to help leaders and cultures to work through this. So once again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate all your work, Neil, and I hope all your listeners continue to follow your lead and discover their next level of best. Thank you.
Thank you.